Thank you, PC. Let me start by acknowledging the Honorable Chair, as well as all members of Portfolio Committee, MEC Mema Zibuko, as well as other MECs that are present, MMCs and councillors and from various municipalities, HOD, PC and management of the SAPS, different stakeholders, as well as members of media. PC, in his opening remarks, he already spoken about the skewed picture that we saw during the current picture quarter, which is first quarter of 2020, 2021, as well as 2021 and 2022. It has been overemphasized that the skewed pictures normally in time series. There is one component called irregular or random variation. This is mainly due to fluctuation in time series caused by many irregularities that cannot be anticipated, detected, eliminated, predictable. They range from floods, earthquake, drought, strikes, war, disasters. I guess in that list of disasters we can include a pandemic which was brought about by COVID-19, as this was also declared as a national state of disaster. Hence, we're saying in our analysis, when you compare the current picture, we will bring into focus the adjusted values, whereby we bring into focus comparing the current picture, which is 2020, 2021, 2021, 2022. We compare it with the the 2019 period, 2 years back, where there was no lockdown. The idea is to give a better understanding as well as different perspective in terms of the effect that the lockdown had towards this crime trend. This is the picture as it's reflected for the current picture. What we normally do when we release statistics, we normally give maybe 5-year trend to show how we have performed during the year. So for the first one, we did some little bit of a changing. As I indicated, we wanted to adjust the figures to bring into focus the effect of lockdown that had the impact on the actual current picture. What we did, when you look at the far left there, we still kept the current picture, whereby there is a previous period, the quarter one. We saw that almost all categories of crime reported a reduction. This was mainly due because the country at that stage was on a hard lockdown. There were no activities as such in the country. Now there, where we compare the current picture, which is 2020, 2021 versus 2021 and 2022. This is the current picture and the review that we will be speaking to. In this current picture, we saw that most of the crime categories have recorded an increase throughout, which brought about the overall increase of the crime in Gauteng. However, the only crime that we saw a reduction during this period for Gauteng, it was reported under property related. However, we have to note that during the previous period, there was SPC indicated in his opening remarks, under property related, the crime that we only had a challenge during that period was burglaries at non-residential premises, whereby there was an increase in terms of the break-ins at the schools, as well as liquor outlets and other businesses that were closed, not operating. So when we look at the current period, starting with the contact crime, the offenses that are reported under this category, they all have reported an increase, starting with murder, whereby we reported an increase of 77.3%, 522 counts more were reported. Attempted murder, we increased by 444, assault GBH 65.1, common assault 47.8, robbery aggravated, we increased by 57.3, common robbery 70.3, sexual offense 75.8, which brought about the increase to overall category, which is contact crime, were increased by 58.8%. However, when we look at the adjusted figure, when we bring into focus 2029 as well as 2020, we saw that with our murder, yes, we will still have reported an increase, if we adjust this figure, an increase of 1.4%. However, the increase is marginally low as compared to what we had during this current period. The attempted murder will still have reported an increase if we look at the adjusted period, an increase by 1.4%. The other three offenses whereby if we look at the adjusted period where we have reported a reduction, if we did the adjustment, it would have been the assault GBH, robbery aggravating, common robbery. We would have reported a reduction of assault GBH by 1.1. Robbery aggravating would have, a common robbery would have reported a reduction as well as a robbery aggravating. Even the broader category itself, which is contact crime, we report a reduction there of 0.6, reflecting a reduction of 266 cases. Now still under contact crime, but looking into subcategory robbery aggravating as well as sexual offense. These two are already accounted for under the broad category contact crime. Here we're just breaking down the subcategory to show the offenses that are reported under the category. Starting with robbery aggravating, the offenses there are carjacking, truck carjacking, robberies of the cash in transit, bank robberies, house robberies, as well as business robbery. With this subcategory, the current period reflects that all the offenses have reported an increase. However, when we look at the adjusted period, the 2019-2020 comparison with 2021 and 2022, the only offense that would have reported the reduction there, it would have been house robberies there. We would have reduced this offense by 3.5%, whereas the current period we increased by 40%. In terms of the trio crime, the current period we increased our trio crime by 64%. Trio crime is mainly made up of the three offenses, which is carjacking, house robbery, as well as business robbery. Those are the trio crime that are making up this subcategory. So if we look at the adjusted figure there, the trio crime will still have reported an increase there of 8.2%, an increase of 470 cases. In terms of the sexual offenses there, the current period reflects that all the offenses have reported an increase there from the rape, attempted rape, sexual assault, contact sexual offenses. When you look at the adjusted figures there, how crime would have reported there, the only crime that would have reported the reduction there when you look into the comparison of the adjusted period there is contact sexual offense would have reported the reduction of 14.1%, whereas other offenses would have reported an increase. Now we move over to other categories of the crime. The second category will be contact-related crime. Contact-related crime is made up of two offenses, which is the arson as well as the malicious damage to property. For current period, the two offenses have reported an increase. However, when you look at the adjusted figures there, we would have reported the reduction for both offenses. As a result, even the category itself, as a contact-related, would have reported the reduction of 2.9%. In terms of the property-related crime, for current period, two of the offenses reflected a reduction. The other three reported an increase. Those that are reported a reduction currently are burglaries at non-residential premises, reduction of 30.9%, stock theft they were reduced by 8%. In terms of the adjusted figure, all offenses there, the 5 of them reported under the category. If we did the adjustment, we would have reported a reduction. Other serious crime made up of the 3 offenses. For current picture, it shows an increase. However, in terms of the adjusted period there, we would have reported a reduction there under commercial crime by 9.9%. Now moving over to the last category there, which is crime dependent on police action for detection. Ideally for this category, we would want to see a reduction, an increase as opposed to 17 community reported, whereby normally we want to see a reduction. But for this one, we want to see an increase to indicate that there are people being detected or arrested for commission of the crime. Before I conclude with this subcategory, the overall crime for the province in terms of the 17 community reported crime. For current period, we increased by 39.4%. However, if we look at the adjusted period, we would have reported a reduction for overall crime that are reported in Gauteng by 12.7%, as opposed to the current picture of an increase of 39.4%. Going back to crime dependent on police action, for current period there, we saw that all offenses reported under this category, there is a reduction from illegal possession of firearm and ammunition, drug-related crime, driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs, sexual offenses detected as a result of police. Those offenses reported the reduction currently. However, in terms of the adjusted figure there, the period 2019 as well as 2021, we saw an increase overall of this category, meaning there were less people that were detected during the commission of crime. Chairperson, we included this slide because normally when we do our presentation or do our analysis, we do what we call crime ratio, as well as comparing Gauteng with other provinces. By doing so, we allow the fair comparison in terms of the crime activities that are happening in the country so that it can be compared fairly with other provinces. One of the things that I would like to emphasize or put out by putting this slide is to show that Gauteng is and will remain the province with most population. As a result, is one of the overcrowded population. Yes, I know statistically we cannot say there is a direct link between the population as well as crime, because you'll find out there are other countries whereby the population is huge but they are managing their crime. But with South Africa, in particular Gauteng, the situation is different. As PC has mentioned, he mentioned some of the inhibiting factors. Those inhibiting factors, in addition, they add more pressure towards this overcrowded province. So the numbers that we normally use when we do the crime ratio, we obtain them from Stats SA. They normally tailor-make them to us so that they can feed the series that we are currently under review, that we are reporting on. So under this, it clearly shows that Gauteng, in terms of the increases, when you compare the mid-May population estimate currently of the previous one, Gauteng reported an increase in terms of the estimated population growth of 421,385 growth in terms of the population. This is show that Gauteng is still or remain the most crowded province compared to other provinces. What I was talking about in terms of the ratio to determine the rate at which the crime is happening as per crime unit. So as we can see from the slide there, the lockdown effect did not only affect the actual values in terms of the reporting, it also affected the ratio. As we can see, during 2019, we had for murder 7.9 per 100 population, and during 2020-21, we had 4.4 per 100 population, and 2021-2022, we had 7.6 per 100 population. Attempted murder, still we have a 7.7 per 100 population. For 2020-2021, it was 5 per 100 population, and then for 2021-2022, it was 7.4 per 100 population. As we can see from this, clearly the lockdown did not only affect the actual value, which also brought about the skew period, because when you see the 2020-2021, 2029 is more of a fairer comparison to 2020-21-2022 as opposed to the 2020-2021, because the numbers that were reflected on 2020-2021, they are not making any fairer comparison to the current picture, but whereas the 2020-29, they are close to the current period under review, which make them the period under review to be more fairer comparison to period the 2 years back period 2019-2020. How Gauteng has performed as opposed to other provinces in terms of the contribution to the national figure. Gauteng, as I indicated, still recorded most volumes in terms of the crime when compared to other provinces, mainly due to other challenges of those that were highlighted during the beginning of my presentation. As such, Gauteng, as you can see, all provinces have reported an increase in terms of the overall crime. Gauteng there, in terms of the actual values, we reported an increase of 28,060 counts more for overall crime that were reported in Gauteng. However, when you look at the 2019, the numbers are still slightly lower if we were to do the adjustment. However, the contribution of Gauteng towards the national figure, we contributed 27.6% of crime that were reported in Gauteng during the first quarter. For this one, it clearly shows the month-to-month of reporting of cases for the 17 community reported crime. As you can see, the yellow line there will reflect the previous period, and the blue light will, the yellow light will indicate the previous period, and the blue light, it will show the current period. So during the last period, during May, we were under level 5, and then in May, we were in level 4 from the 1st of May, and in level 3, it was implemented during June period. And then the current period there, in April, the country was on level 1 from the 1st of March until the 30th of May. And then in May there, the country was in level 2 from the 31st of May until the 15th of March. And then level 3 there, it was implemented from the 16th of June up until the 30th of June, where we are. But however, the current period that we are reporting here is from the April the 1st up until the 31st of June. From this picture that is showing there, it shows that in April, there was an increase of overall of 15,234. Here we are comparing level 1 and level 5. In May, overall increase of the crime was 10,141. This is whereby we are comparing level 2 and level 4. In June, there was an increase of 2,686. This is where we are comparing level 3 as well as level 3. However, during the current picture, the current period, the level 3 was implemented from the 16th of June. Now, as you can see from the picture there, as soon as there is a conversion of the lockdowns level between the two periods, meaning the current and the previous period, there is also a conversion between the actual numbers, because they are coming closer to each other, which make the difference to become smaller. Because as you can see in May, there was further difference of the lockdowns, hence the difference was 15,234. And then in May, there was a difference of 10,141. And in June, because now the lockdown levels between the current and the previous period were closer together, converging towards each other. This is where we see the differences becoming smaller, whereby we end up having a reduction of 2,686. However, when we look at the district there, all the districts have reported an increase during the current period, with the highest increase recorded by Johannesburg there in terms of the actual value, an increase of 11,025, which brought about the increase of the province as such, as all 5 districts reported an increase. Now, when you look at our top 40, national, they all usually maintain their top 30 station per crime category in terms of their contribution, due mainly to their high volumes of crime. But with Gauteng, we decided to maintain our top 40, reason being that the top 40 station, we established that those are the stations that are normally contributing 50% of crime, of overall crime in Gauteng. Hence, throughout the crime category for Gauteng, we maintain our top 40 so that this top 40 can be regularly be maintained, because as soon as we reduce volumes of this crime for Gauteng, in turn, we will change the picture for Gauteng. So our top 40 for overall crime, referring to 17 community reported crime. The 14 stations there that are reflected in yellow, the top 14 stations, they are also forming part of our national top list of the crime, the overall crime during the first quarter. However, the two stations there, Honeydew and Johannesburg Central, those two stations, they are forever the first or the second during our listing of station every quarter, mainly due to the profile of the station because of the volume that they are accumulating during the compilation. However, this time around, Honeydew took the first place, and it's followed by Johannesburg Central. Fortunately, all 40 stations during the current period have reported an increase for their overall crime. The highest increase recorded being Johannesburg Central as well as Brooklyn, with each station reporting 831. However, if we would have done adjusted method where we adjust the current period with the 2019 period, there will only be 4 stations that would have reported an increase. The station would have been Temba, Alexandra, Silverton, as well as Olivenholzbusch. Those are the stations that would have reported an increase if we had done the adjusted method of comparing it with 2019. So this top 40 currently, for the current period, they are contributing 49.6% of overall crime in Gauteng. The contact crime, the narrative is still the same as I explained with the 17 community reported, whereby I indicated that as soon as there is a conversion of the lockdown level between the two periods, even it also have an impact on the number, the reduction of crime between the two periods. The fairer comparison is between the level 1 and level 5. As you can see, the numbers are still big because we are comparing level 1 as well as level 5 under contact crime. In that first month of quarter there being April, contact crime increased by 8,310. In May, we increased by 5,849. In June, we increased by 1,048. This is whereby the two lockdown periods are becoming closer to each other. This is hence we are having this smaller reduction as compared to what we saw in April. Now, when we look at the district performance during this first quarter, all districts as well have increased their contact crime. As a result, Gauteng reported an increase of 15,207. However, if we would have done the adjusted period there, the district that would have reported an increase there, it would have been all 4 districts except Johannesburg. If we have done a adjusted method there, Johannesburg would have been the only district that would have reported the reduction there, because the numbers that are reported currently are lesser than what we have reported in 2019. Still, for this category, we also have our top 40. Our top 40 stations from this list, the top 14 of those are also featuring in the list of the national contact crime list during the first quarter, with Johannesburg there being the top of the list in the province, and nationally they are ranking number 3. And Hillbrow will be the second contributing station for our contact crime. Nationally, they will be ranking number 4. And Temba, it will be number 3 provincially, but nationally it will have been number 5 for their contact crime. Overall, this station, they have increased their contact crime during the first quarter. None of the stations have reported the reduction, and 22 of the stations, if we would have done the adjusted method, they would have reported an increase as well. All the districts are also represented in this list of the contact crime. The top being Johannesburg, they're having 16 stations, Ekurhuleni and Tshwane, each district having a 10 station, West Rand having 2 stations, which is Kagiso as well as Randfontein. Citibank also represented by 2 stations from the contact crime, which is Orange Farm as well as Everton. Now this list of top 40 of our contact crime, they are contributing 52.4% towards our picture of contact, overall recorded picture of contact crime during the first quarter. When we move over to our domestic violence related crimes that were reported, here we include all the crimes related, not selecting the crime. In total, in Gauteng, we reported 7,619 cases that are related to domestic violence during the first quarter. As we look at the breakdown of the month, during the first month of the quarter, which is April, where we were in under level 5 of the lockdown, we reported 2,868 cases that were linked to domestic violence. In May, we reported under level 4, we reported 2,127 of cases of the domestic violence, and in June, level 3, we reported 2,624. In terms of the district, the district which is contributing mainly towards the domestic violence-related activities there in the province is Johannesburg, accounting 40%, translating to 3,010 cases that were reported by Johannesburg alone for domestic violence-related crime. Now, when you look at the district in terms of the attribute of the domestic violence, where most of the domestic violence are being attributed from the province. In Gauteng, their top 3 offenses whereby domestic violence played a major role is common assault there. Out of all common assault cases that were reported, 3,566 of those were linked to domestic violence. Assault with intent to inflict grievously bodily harm was the second offense whereby domestic violence played a role there, with a total of 1,348 of those offenses of common assault that were reported. And the third offenses where the domestic violence played a role there is malicious damage to property with a total of 1,035. In terms of the district, zooming into murder, rape, as well as sexual offense. The district whereby murder were linked to domestic violence and contributing the most was Ekurhuleni, Johannesburg, and Tshwane, whereby each district reporting 7 cases of murder that were linked to domestic violence during the first quarter. Sedibeng had 1 case there. Western had 1 case there, whereas Sedibeng did not report any murder that were linked to domestic violence. In terms of our rapes there, the district which had most incident of rape that were linked to domestic violence was Ekurhuleni, followed by Johannesburg with 30, as well as Tshwane by 25. Those are the 3 heavyweight districts in the province that are contributing mainly to the rape of domestic violence. As we can see from the 2 offenses there, the murder and rape, the majority of the victims, they were the female. With murder, out of the 22 cases of murder that were reported linked to to murder, 14 were female, the victims were female, and 8 were male. And then as for rapes, out of 110 cases of rape linked to domestic violence, majority of females as well were the victims with 99 cases, and then males 11 cases. The murder, I will not necessarily explain the narrative in terms of explaining the graph itself, but I will immediately go to the performance of the district. The district as well also reported an increase for the murder during the first quarter, which brought about the increase to the province by 522 cases. The highest increase being reported by Johannesburg with 164 cases of murder. The first one, it was Ekurhuleni with 171 cases of murder, Johannesburg 162, as well as Tshwane 83, Western 58 and 48. But if we would have done the adjusted calculation there of murder, comparing it with 2019 to take into effect the lockdown, the district that would have reported a reduction for the murder there, it would have been Ekurhuleni as well as Johannesburg. As you can see that the number for current period is lesser than the number of previous 2-year period of 2019-2020. Now, when you look at the contributing factors of murder during the first quarter in Gauteng, the top 5 contributors of murder in Gauteng, when we take the analysis, we do a sample of 955 cases out of all the murders that were reported in Gauteng during the first quarter. The top most contributing factor of murders in Gauteng during the period under review was argument, misunderstanding, however not related to domestic, road rage, and provocation. From that 955 They account 197. The second most contributors of murders in Gauteng was robberies, from house robbery, business robbery, as well as street robbery, accounting 88 cases. The third one, it will be vigilantism, with a total of 79 cases, taxi-related 25, carjacking 12 cases. We also mentioned the other phenomena not necessarily being the causative factors of murder. In Gauteng, for the current period, a total of 5 police officials, members of South African Police Service, were murdered, of which the 4 of those was on duty and 1 was off duty. When we compare to the previous period, we had an increase of 3, because the previous period, there were 3 members of police that were murdered, same period, whereas now we have 5. In terms of the murders that are happening at the farm or small holding, we had 1 incident and the victim was a farm worker. This was reported at Heidelberg. One of the contributors in terms of our murders, the phenomenon there is the multiple murders that we are experiencing in Gauteng. Hence, it normally push out the counts that we're reporting. So just only out of 88 dockets that were open, it was reported that 189 victims were as a result of those 88 dockets. So in 80 dockets, each there were 2 victims. In 7 dockets, each there were 3 victims. And lastly, in 1 docket, it was 8 victims. This is the last incident that happened in May in Zanspruit. And then the place of occurrence where our murders are likely to occur. The most place there that is commonly where these murders are happening in Gauteng is public place, street, open field, recreation center, park, beach, parking area, abandoned buildings, whereby with a total of 609 from that sample that we took of 955. The second most place where these murders are happening in Gauteng are residents of perpetrators or victim, including the residents known by the victim, perpetrators, family, friends, and neighbors, with a total of cases there, 221. And the third most place where these murders are happening in Gauteng is business premises, from the malls, restaurant, workplace, office park, entertainment center, such as movies, theater, gambling facility, with a total of 31 cases. And liquor outlet also, we determined that it was also the place occurrence of murder in Gauteng. Now our list of top 40 for the contributors of murder in Gauteng. Of all the stations that reported an increase, there 39 of those, it's only Roodepoort that recorded a reduction. From our list, there are only 3 that are featuring in the national list of murder, which is Kagiso, Ivory Park, as well as Alexandra. Nationally, Kagiso is ranking number 10, Ivory Park number 13, Alexandra number 24. So the highest increase there was reported obviously by Kagiso, as is ranking number 1 in the province in terms of the murder, contributing, increasing by 26 counts. As well with this top 40 list, all the districts are represented there, with Johannesburg a total of 15 stations, Tshwane only 5 stations, Ekurhuleni 13, Sedibeng they have 4 stations, which is Sebokeng, Didier, Orange Farm, Everton, and Western is Kagiso, Bekesdal, and Randfontein. Those are the stations that are forming part of our list in Gauteng of our murder. So in total, the top 40 stations are contributing 61.1% of a total figure of Gauteng figure for murder during the first quarter. The trio crime, the increases over the month, we saw it reducing to 226 during the month of June. When you look at the district, all the districts have reported an increase for their trio crime during the first quarter under review, with the highest increase there being reported by Johannesburg by 968 cases. Of course, with these increases of the district has brought about an increase towards the provincial value, which is 2,422 cases. We also have a list for the top 40 of the trio crime in Gauteng. From our top 40 there, 17 of those stations, which are the top 17, also are featuring in the list of the top 30 of trio crime nationally during the first quarter. The first 5 there being Olivenhoutbosch, Honeydew, Moffat View, Tembisa, as well as Ivory Park. Those are the top 5 stations that are also still forming part of the national list. As we can see in terms of the performance of this station, it was only Mamelodi East from the top 40 that recorded a reduction, whereas the other 39 stations indicated an increase. As well with this crime category there, all the districts are represented, with Johannesburg with a total of 18 stations, Ekurhuleni and Tshwane, each district having 8 stations, Western 4, Sedibeng 2. Now the station we reported the highest increase there, which is also the first station there, it is Olivenhoutbosch with a total of 83 counts increases for the trio crime during the first period. In terms of these increases of the station, the top list of the trio crime station in Gauteng, in total the station they are contributing 52.3% of towards figures of trio crime in Gauteng. Now moving over to a carjacking, the first crime under the trio crime, the narrative in terms of explaining the crime is the same as with the previous slide there. I will immediately go to the district performance there. All the districts for the carjacking, they have reported an increase. The highest increase being reported by Johannesburg by 467, followed by Ekurhuleni 360 for the carjacking, which brought about the increase there of the province by 1,377. If we have done the adjustment, all the districts would have still reported an increase for the carjacking during the current period if we would have compared it with the 2019 period. We also maintain the carjacking list of top 40 in the province. From our top 40 there, we saw that more than 50% of the stations from our top 40 are also featured in the national list of the carjacking, because in total 21 stations are also forming part of the national list of carjacking. From this list of top 40 there, the station that reported the reduction there, it was station Alberton reported the reduction there, with a total of 2 cases, 5.7 reduction, whereas Mamelodi East, it stabilizes the number of cases that they reported currently, mean what they have reported currently is exactly the same number as what they have during the previous period of 2020-2021. The rest of other 38 stations indicated an increase. With those that reported an increase there, Olivenhoutbosch increased by 41 counts higher, which is the highest increase when you compare the other top 40 stations. With this one as well, all the districts are represented, with Johannesburg 16 stations, Tshwane 9 stations, Ekurhuleni 10, Sedibeng 2, West Rand and 2 stations. This station, the top 40, they are contributing 56.5% towards the figure of the carjacking in Gauteng during the first quarter. The second offense within the trio crime, it will be robbery at residential premises. This offense there, during the month of June, reported the reduction of 44. In May and in June, there was an increase of 292 in April and 184 in May. The district there, in terms of the increases, all the districts have reported an increase, with Johannesburg reporting the highest, of 299, followed by Tshwane by 188, which brought the increase of the province there of robberies at residential premises by 520. When you look at the comparison with with 2029, the adjusted period there, the district that would have reported the reduction for the house robberies, the robberies at residential premises, it would have been Ekurhuleni, Sedibeng, as well as Tshwane. We also have a top list of these robberies at residential premises in Gauteng, of which 12 of those are also forming part of the national list. The first 5 being Honeydew, Ivory Park, Olivenhoutbosch, Moffat View, as well as Kagiso. From this top 40, it was only Diepsloot that had the reduction there, a reduction of 28 cases, 56%, whereas the other 2 stations stabilized their cases, which is Temba, Luata, and the remainder station, 37 stations, indicated an increase. And of those stations that reported an increase, Moffat View was the highest with a total count of 40. And then even this one, all the districts are represented in this list, with Johannesburg 21, Ekurhuleni 5, Tshwane 8, Western 3, as well as Sedibeng 3. So this top 40 station, they are contributing 61.6% of the figure towards the robbery at residential premises for Gauteng during the first quarter. The last crime under the trio crime, which is robbery at non-residential premises. For this one, all the districts still reported an increase, which brought about an increase for the province by 565. The highest increase of the district there was reported by Johannesburg with a total of 202, followed by Ekurhuleni by 156, Tshwane 132. Those are the three heavyweight districts within the province. The other two increases was from Western 53, Sedibeng 22. In terms of looking at the adjusted period, they're comparing it with 2019, the district that would have reported the reduction there for the robbery at non-residential premises, it would have been Ekurhuleni as well as Sedibeng. We also have top 40 of our of this crime there, of which the top 14 of those stations also feature in the national list. From this top 42 of the stations recorded a reduction, and then the others stabilize, and the remaining 38 indicated an increase. Of those that reported an increase there, it was Alberton with the highest there of counts there, 26, and then Temba there reporting the highest reduction of the two there by 9 counts. Still with these offenses, all the districts are represented. Johannesburg 12 station, Tshwane 12, Ekurhuleni 11, Western 2, as well as Sedibeng 2 station that are featured in this list. Overall, this station are contributing 54% of the crime of this offense in the province during the first quarter. Now looking into the robberies of the CIT, which is still part of the robbery aggravating crime there. For the current period, we reported a total of 12 cases, whereby there were 12 stations, each station reporting one case. So when you look at this 12 stations, 7 of those were cross pavement, and 5 of those were AV on the road. If we have looked at the adjusted, we would have had a stabilization, because what we reported now, which is 12, is still the same of what we reported in 2019. But when we look at the previous period there, we had an increase there of 1 case, because previous period we had 11 cases of the CIT, and currently we had 12 cases. So for this one, the truck hijacking there, there's also an increase of all the district, which is increasing all the value for the province, with the highest increase being Ekurhuleni with 51 cases. The second one, which is Tshwane, with 47 cases. Now we move over to the sexual offenses there as a subcategory. The sexual offenses is made up of the rape, attempted rape, sexual assault, and contact sexual offenses. With this offense crime subcategory there, all the districts have reported an increase, with the highest increase being reported by Johannesburg with a total of 378 cases, followed by Ekurhuleni 209, Tshwane 292, Ekurhuleni 290. Those are the 3 heavyweight districts in the province. As a result, from the increases of the district, we had an increase of the province there by 1,135. Now, when we look at the place of occurrence of the sexual offenses cases that were reported in the province during the first quarter, when you look at the sample that we took there, the common place where these incidents or crime is happening is, it was indicated as the residence of the perpetrator, victim, including the resident known by the victim or perpetrator, family, friend, or neighbor, with a total cases of 576. The second place where this crime is committed is public place, which is street, open field, recreation center, park, beach, parking area, with a total of 285. The other category, we just sum up them together as other, but it will include from the hotel, prison, holding cell, public transport, as well as mode of transport such as bus, car, plane, and boat, and as well as including business premises. Those we group them together as other and amounting to 60 cases that were reported as a place of occurrence for the sexual offenses. We also have the top 40 of the sexual offenses, of which from this top 40, the top 9 stations are also featuring in the national list of the sexual offenses, the first one being Temba, the second Alexandra, and the third being Tembisa. The fourth being Dobsonville and Kagiso. Those are the top 5 contributors of sexual offenses in Gauteng during the first quarter. So from this list, it was only Midlands that reported the reduction, whereas the other 39 stations indicated an increase during the third quarter. Of those that reported an increase there, the highest was Temba, which is ranking the first there, with a total count of 37. As well with this one crime, all the districts are represented there, with Johannesburg 14 stations, Tshwane 10, Ekurhuleni 10 as well, Western 3, as well as Sedibeng, they have 3 stations. So this top 40 station to the provincial figure of the sexual offenses, they are contributing 54.9% of the crime of sexual offense in the province. Now moving over to the other crime category, which is property-related crime. Property-related crime for this current picture, it was only Western district that reported the reduction of 2.3%, which is equivalent to 36 cases less that were reported by the district. However, all other 4 districts reported an increase, which the highest increase reported by Tshwane by 1,768 cases, followed by Johannesburg 1,492. Those are the districts that reported an increase. It was only Western that reported the reduction of 36 cases. We also have a top contributors of the contributor station of this property-related crime in the province, of which this top 40, 12 of those are also featuring in the national list of that property-related crime. The top there, 5 being Brooklyn, Sunnyside, Honeydew, Wildebreg, as well as Benoni. So from the top 40 of our province, 6 stations recorded the reduction and 34 stations indicated an increase. And of those stations that reported an increase, Brooklyn was the highest with 359, and the reduction there was from Temba, the highest of 45 counts. With this one as well, all the districts are represented, with Johannesburg with the 13 station, Ekurhuleni 18, Tshwane 14 station, Western 3 station, and Sedibeng, they have 2 stations from this list. Now, when you look at the contribution of this top 40 station towards our figure of Gauteng for property-related crime, they are contributing 53.8%. Now, the last crime there to be presented today is stock theft. Stock theft, when you look for the current period, there are 2 districts that reported an increase, which is Sedibeng as well as Tshwane. Sedibeng, they reported 3 more cases. Tshwane, they reported 16 more cases. The other district reported the reduction, the highest being Ekurhuleni, with a total of 25 cases, whereas Johannesburg as well as West Rand, each district reporting 7 cases lower. However, for the province, as general, the stock theft there reported the reduction of 20 cases less, which is equivalent to 8%. Chairperson, I have to emphasize that this was the short version. The longest version is also forming part of this. We only extracted the short version to have a summarized report for the first quarter. Thank you.
Thanks for the stats presented to us as the committee and the stakeholders and also media. We will take the discussion when the time arrives. I will request Member Mhlagaza Manamela to take over. Okay, I will take Member Kanyile to take over this presentation on the Institute for Security Studies. Member Kanyile.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you very much to the MEC for being here, the PC, and the presentation you've just received now from Mekhalane. Let me just indicate that the crime stats we have received, for us to be able to understand them, we need to also understand context and be guided on some of the key issues. That is why the Community Safety Portfolio Committee has invited Mr. Graham Newman, who has a 26-year experience in promoting public safety and justice in South Africa. He currently heads the Justice and Violence Prevention Program at the Institute for Security Studies, which is popularly known as ISS. He served also in the cabinet-appointed panel of experts on policing and crowd management and regularly publishes his work. As an example, he contributed in the book, Police Integrity in South Africa. Graham has a master's degree in public and development management from the University of the Witwatersrand. I want to hand over to Mr. Nhem. Thank you very much.
It is an honor and a privilege to have been invited to deliver a presentation to you today, this important event this morning. As a lifelong resident of Gauteng and a former member of the Gauteng Department of Community Safety, I have a particular interest in supporting efforts to improve public safety in this province. As mentioned, I've spent most of my career working on issues of public safety and security, policing and criminal justice. Currently, as the head of the Justice and Violence Prevention Program at the Institute for Security Studies, I'm fortunate to lead a team of dedicated people focusing on 4 key objectives. Firstly, to better understand the nature and trends and factors driving violence in South Africa. Secondly, to assess and inform options for practically improving policing. Thirdly, to assist efforts to rebuild the National Prosecuting Authority. And fourthly, to promote an understanding of evidence-based violence prevention interventions at the national, provincial, and community levels. As some of you may know, the ISS is a Pan-African independent organization involved in policy research, technical support, and capacity building. We work with a wide range of partners, including the African Union, various regional economic community organizations such as SADC or ECOWAS, national governments and civil society organizations across the continent to achieve our vision of a peaceful and prosperous Africa for all its people. We have a staff complement of about 280 people from 16 different African countries who are currently working from Chad, Cote d'Ivoire, Ethiopia, Kenya, Mali, Nigeria, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. South Africa is where our headquarters are based. I see the program has me analyzing the SAPS performance in the first quarter of 2021-2022. Must state up front that I'm not in a position to do justice to this topic. I don't have access to the SAPS performance chart data or any of the internal databases, and I've had not an opportunity to interview police officials in the province about their perspectives and what has been achieved during this period or not. Therefore, I'm not in a position to make a fair assessment of police performance in the current quarterly, or in this quarter. However, I'm going to speak a bit more about measuring performance in policing and hopefully raise some issues that will help the Portfolio Committee, or this committee, on community safety better understand some of the issues and hopefully improve and enhance its oversight role. Firstly, I will be speaking, is the presentation coming up? There's just a few graphs. Oh, they're loading it. Okay, firstly I'll start with a brief overview of the key objectives that successful and effective policing agencies worldwide tend to place at the center of their work that enables them to have a kind of meaningful impact on public safety. Secondly, I'll look at some of the challenges of measuring police performance and highlight some of the international trends in this regard. Thirdly, I'll argue that to be effective, the police have to prioritize and be as specific as possible in their strategies, plans, and operations. Broad objectives such as reducing all crime or all contact crime are unlikely to achieve positive results due to the various and complex factors driving these crimes, as was pointed out by General Mwela earlier on. So decades of experience in crime reduction shows that goals to be successful in improving public safety, you have to be as specific as possible and have as much information as possible about the specific crime types that you're trying to reduce and tackle. In Gauteng, I'll argue that there needs to be a specific focus on two key crime categories. Both of them are quite broad and contain many different kinds of crimes. The first is murder, and the second is aggravated robberies. We also know that gender-based violence is a key priority, and there is a national strategic plan in place, and a lot of work is going into that. But I will not have time to talk into that in much depth. This does not mean that the police must ignore all other crimes, of course. Everybody wants their crime to be taken seriously by the police. But police leadership need to ensure that they have detailed information analysis to what is driving crime in these categories so that they have clear evidence-based strategies to be able to allocate adequate resourcing to ensure that they can have impact on these specific categories. I'll then lastly speak briefly to the importance of improving both officer conduct and police safety, which I think are key concerns in South Africa. And hopefully, as I said, the presentation will give food for thought and an opportunity for debate and discussion, and for this committee to be able to better do its work. Okay, so those are the issues I'll be talking about. I think one of the key issues that are often or not really given enough attention to in South Africa is that the key objective and the difference between effective policing agencies internationally and those that are less effective, it's quite clear. The single most important objective is to build public trust in the police. As was pointed out by General Mwela, and if you look at the police numbers compared to the numbers of people in this province, we've got almost 16 million people in this province. Most of those people are not committing crimes. Most of the people want to have a good relationship with the police. And the police really need to be able to identify those criminals, those few people who are committing the 4,500 murders a year, 4,500 attempted murders, the specific aggravated robberies and rapes. And in order to do that, they need information and support from the communities. So that is why in many police agencies nowadays, building trust sits at the heart of everything the police do and must be orientated towards that. And simply put, it means that when a member of the public, whether that person is a victim of crime, being stopped in a roadblock, not a suspect, or a suspect, after they had engagement with a police officer, they should feel better about the police. Even if they're a suspect and now they're in handcuffs and they're going off to be put in a prison or a police cell, they must have a sense that the person that they've just come across in uniform is a highly trained professional, knows what they're doing, and is not vindictive, and is not going to do anything unlawful. And that's so critically important because even suspects have family members, have other networks, and where police act in a way that doesn't build that trust, it tends to break down people's support and legitimacy in the police. So it is a key area, and there's a global sort of trend in this way, and a huge amount of research showing what's called procedural justice, in the way that the states carry out their criminal justice systems, is as important as what they do. This is from the objectives are just from the Geneva Handbook on Democratic Policing. And this study, which looked at it was a meta-study of what works and doesn't work in policing as far back as in 1997, says that the less respectful the police are towards suspects and citizens generally, the less the public, the people, will comply with the law generally. If they think the police are not complying with laws and regulations, they won't either. So changing police style may be as important as focusing on police substance, meaning performance. What are you actually doing? Making both the style and substance of police practices more legitimate in the eyes of the public, particularly amongst high-risk juveniles, may be one of the most effective long-term police strategies for crime prevention. And since 1997, this has been borne over in various studies across the world. But easier said than done. So challenges in measuring police performance. It's a notorious difficult thing to do, largely because most of what the police do and achieve is not captured on performance charts or in statistics. It's very difficult to measure the hugely positive impact that hardworking, dedicated men and women in blue are having in the communities they serve. In fact, many of the indicators we continue to use in South Africa to assess police performance are not telling us about the quality of the services, the hard work and dedication that is being undertaken every day by police officers in their communities. And in some of the performance indicators could actually be directing police activities away from enhancing public safety. I'll speak to you a bit more in a moment. And of course, crime statistics are not a measure of police performance, actually. Crime statistics are a measure of the number of crimes that have been reported to the police. And they can go up and down for various reasons. And I think the presentation in the last presentation shows how the change in environment in South Africa, lockdown regulations, the pandemic, the banning of alcohol, stopping gatherings, stopping people from traveling, had a huge impact positively on crime. When those restrictions were lifted and the factors came back into place that drive crimes goes up. If we were measuring police only on crime statistics, we would say they were doing a fantastic job last year, now they're doing a terrible job. But that's not actually the case at all. And so we must be very careful when we use crime statistics to assess police performance. Crime statistics should tell us what the burden of crime is that the police have to face and help us understand what is being reported and not. And not only do things like pandemics and disasters have big impacts on crime, but other issues like trust in police. The lower people trust the police, the less people come forward to report crime. And the higher that people trust police, the more people come to report crime. So you could have a situation where the police are really starting to work on improving officer conduct, better training, better resourcing, and you could have increased crime statistics because a lot of crime that was not being reported is now being reported because people start to improve trust in the police. And this is particularly prevalent in crimes such as sexual offenses and assaults, and I'll show you some graphs on that in a moment. So it's not only about the crime, but it's about a range of other factors. And in fact, this is why internationally, many police agencies are moving away from not only crime statistics, but also measures such as numbers of arrests, roadblocks, because they realize that, if you say to the police, I want you to increase your arrests by 10%, it's not difficult for police to do that. But it might be more difficult for them to go and arrest specific people committing street robberies. But if you tell them to increase arrests generally, then they'll go out and arrest people for petty crimes, possession of drugs, urinating in public, that kind of thing. And so a lot of agencies are actually moving away from the use of crime stats and the use of operational statistics to measure police performance. It doesn't mean that we don't collect that data and we analyze it and get a better sense of the resources the police have and how they can use this, but it's a dangerous tool if there's not a lot of nuance behind what actually those statistics mean. And just in terms of what the National Victims of Crime Survey shows us here, is that there's been a general reduction in the proportion of people reporting crime to police for many violent crimes. So you can see there in 2018 compared to 2016, housebreaking, only about 50% of housebreakings are being reported, less than 50% of assaults, even hijackings have dropped to about 70%. And we'd seen quite big declines from about 2013 onwards. And there's various reasons. People don't sometimes think the police can do anything. They might, if they lose their insurance, they're less likely to report household theft. So there's a range of reasons, not only about whether the police are trusted or not, that people may or may not stop reporting crimes to the police. So what's been happening internationally is that there's been a move towards more broader impact indicators. For example, surveys amongst people who have had engagement with police. Do those people feel satisfied with the interactions they've had? Do they feel better about the police than before and after? Are they more likely to trust the police when they see them? Would they tell their children, if you get lost, the first thing you must do is look for a police officer because they trust the police to help their children? There's other sort of indicators such as the proportions of victims who report crime in certain categories, as I said, because that can go up when people start improving their relationships with police. Proportions of people feeling safe, walking alone in the neighborhoods at night, and reduction in people seeking treatment for violence-related injuries at health facilities, for example. So those are more like impact, high-level indicators. They really help get a sense of what are people's experiences and feelings of safety in their neighborhoods, and how do they see the police. And if you get that right, then we achieve what ultimately are the high-level objectives in South Africa. Everybody feels and are safe. So why prioritize murder and robbery? Murder is probably our most reliable crime statistic and the best proxy for violence. Reducing the factors contributing to murder also reduces violence generally. Most murders take place in relatively few locations. We were given the top 40, about 143, I think, police precincts. So about 30% record 50% of all the crime, and about only in about 8 Gauteng precincts in 2019-20, almost 20%, 1 in 5 murders were reported. Now, there are many different reasons why murders take place and occur, and I'll get into that into a second. But I think the concern for Gauteng and why we say there should be a focus on murder is because that in the long-term trends, murder has been increasing. The numbers of murders have been going up almost every year since 2013. In the last year, we've seen a slight reduction, but that long-term trend is worrying. If you collate data after a large period of time, you can see that there's actually very clear places. Police working with researchers and others need to go into those communities and find out what's actually going on there. Do detailed doc analysis, not only about the time, the date, but also about what is the circumstances, what is happening there, why are these murders taking place? Because it's likely that the police has this data, but if there's a collaborative effort with civil society, other government departments, social development, education, health, NGOs, working together to really address the factors that are leading to this, we will see reductions. And the moment, I still think that the police are kind of left alone. It's kind of the police present with the crime statistics, and there's assumption if the crime statistics are going up, the police are doing a bad job, and if they're going down, they're doing a worse job. Perhaps what should happen is when the crime statistics are released, all the cabinet ministers should be sitting there, and each one should say what their department are doing with the police to change the environment in which crime is taking place. So in Gauteng, we can see that that's a picture of contact crime. You can see half of all the contact crimes are assaults. And that's something really, it's about it's interpersonal engagements, it's about drinking alcohol. So really, the police are not going to get on top of assaults by just arresting people, because it doesn't change the factors and the drivers there. I mentioned that a bit before. But we also see there's quite a large number of robberies. And I would say that the police's role should be more towards robbery, because that's where people are hardened criminals, lifelong criminals. Various studies into robbery suspects, repeat violent offenders in prisons, show that they start quite young, in their late teens, with petty crime. They start getting into the streets with knives, committing street robberies, and then they start, once they get hold of a firearm, they start committing your robberies of spaza shops and homes. As they get more experienced, they get more network, they start selling goods into networks, and that's how sort of organized crime gets driven. The police are looking at everything. That provides us, and with the resources, there is a definite shortage of resources given the size of the population and the kind of crime challenge facing the police. The police will be completely overstretched if they're focusing on everything. So that's why it's just about getting into 2 key kind of categories and really trying to work with different people to get a handle on these. Gauteng murder causes, there we go. That's just a pie chart of the statistics mentioned earlier. You can see the dark blue, that's interpersonal violence. Robbery is the light blue. Vigilantism's a high number there as well. And then you get to tax-related, illicit mining, gang, and that's also organized crime. I mean, those networks are identifiable. They work in specific areas. They have a particular modus operandi. And that's sort of where you want your police to be able to direct their resources. Unfortunately, this is a national picture, but the detection rate for murder has been going, sorry, I'm not actually, okay, so that was just the hotspots in Yanga. That's the pie chart on the different kinds of contact crime, but these statistics have all been given to you just now. That's the causes of crime or murders. And that's just a picture, that's the sort of trend of the national SAPS detection rate for murder. And you can see that has been going down. And that is a concern, obviously. Because ultimately, you want the detection rate to be going up. More people are being arrested or identified as having committed murders. More people are going to the courts and being prosecuted. There are going to be fewer murders. Most people, a vast majority, do not commit murders. We're talking about a very specific type of personality, high risk, mostly male, with a very particular upbringing. Most of them are actually being exposed to brutality and abuse growing up. Violence is highly normalized. And once they've committed one murder, it's not that difficult to commit more murders. So you start seeing that specifically in gangs or kind of taxi industry where people are hiring people to commit multiple assassinations. It's the same people doing it over and over again. And you want to be able to identify those people and the network supporting them, because key arrests there and prosecutions can have a huge impact in the murder rate. Okay, so aggravated robbery, I've talked about murder more generally. Another reason why murder is important, because we're being assessed in Sustainable Development Goals internationally against homicide rates. And so if our homicide rate, our murder rate's going up, it's not good for our country's ability to attract foreign investment, it's not good for our brand, not good for tourism. So there's a whole lot of reasons why murder, we really need to get on top of murder. Robbery, I've spoken about, it also causes a lot of fear. So it's one of the crimes, whether it's a street robbery or a house robbery, that really drives people's fear in a fear of crime. Being attacked on the street with somebody with a knife or in your home with a gun really makes you feel unsafe. So it also speaks to the issue of fear of crime. And of course, a lot of murders that we saw are committed in robberies. If people resist, people try and fight back, they can get killed. And here again, most incidents are committed by a relatively small number of repeat offenders. This is what they do. They go out in the streets and they rob people of their goods. That's how they make money. As they get firearms, they start hitting shops and homes. Some of them get involved in organized crime, carjacking. So they become much more organized, and they're feeding into organized syndicates. Oh yeah, sure. Keep on. Maybe you should do that. You can see me here. Sorry about that. Okay, so if we just go back. And again, so in Gauteng, the aggravated robbery trend has been going up for most of the last few years. Since 2013, we saw a slight dip in 2018, but it's starting to go up again. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that pyramid is like an inverted pyramid. So most robberies are street robberies. This is where career criminals start, on the streets, with knives usually, going after people's cell phones, jewelry, small amounts of money. Those that do that for long enough get into more organized forms, carjacking, as I mentioned that, robbery of residential, non-residential. And then of course the more organized get into truck hijackings, because those are really organized networks, moving goods through warehouses and other structures. Cash in transit heists and bank robbery also amongst the sort of people who've been around in this game for a long time. So moving on again, and then you can see the national trend. I don't know the start of Gauteng, but you can see that also since around 2012, the detection rate has dropped. So that at the moment, nationally, just under 17 out of every 100 robberies are ultimately, those dockets are solved or closed. Gauteng has a history in actually doing very good against trio crimes. From 2000 the strategy was developed over a period of 2 years, 2007 to 2008. I won't go through a lot of detail there, but basically, there were 32,000 police officers in the province. I think at that stage, about 350 were involved in the strategy, actively doing it. Driven by crime intelligence, specialized task teams, really focusing on making sure those task teams and detectives had adequate technical support and forensics and that kind of thing. Strategically replaced visible policing, and that sort of strategy was really kind of managed quite closely, and it did have a good impact. So there you can see from 2009-10 to 2011-12, house robbery went down 21%, business robbery went down 19, almost 20%, and hijacking down 32%. And it was really because the police were getting much better at that time identifying the people involved, the networks they're involved in. We saw arrest rates going up quite dramatically for these crimes. The proportion of dockets going to courts improved, and the conviction rate started improving. So those networks are starting to be destabilized, and you saw that reduction. There was a change in leadership then, and I think there was a move to try and have a new strategy and then focus again on too many things, and the robberies started going up, the trio crimes started going up again. The issue of SAPS conduct, again, speaks to the issue of trust. Police misconduct and criminality, where cops are involved in crime themselves or seem to be working with criminals, erodes public trust and support for the police who are good and doing good work. And you don't have to have many people who are doing this. When society hear of one bad cop, they decide that all cops are bad. We've done research with various focus groups of people. They might have had good and bad experience with police. We say, what have your experiences been with police? The first one they typically will remember is a bad experience, even if they've had good experiences subsequently, because people remember bad things more than remember good things, especially when it comes to interactions with policing and the state. So not only then we find that it undermines the trust in the police, but it also generally seems to undermine trust in government. Of course, it also leads to things like civil claims, which diverts money away from policing, and where communities don't trust the police, you see a growth of organized crime and alternative forms of authority. It could be taxi associations, gangs, start stepping in, and that's why we have a high level of vigilantism. Here's the graph just of national, the number of SAPS disciplinary hearings, the trends, and you can see a big reduction in the last few years. It's not quite clear why that's happened, but it's dropped from almost 6,000 down to 1,662 hearings last year. That could mean that police are generally behaving much better, or it could mean that the system is not performing as well as it should. This just shows the outcomes, and you can see in most of the hearings, about half of the time the subject officer is either found not guilty or the case is withdrawn against them. In the other half, there's some kind of sanctions. Most of the sanctions, about almost 80% to 90% of it, will be written warning, verbal warning, that kind of thing. And then about 7 to 10% are what we call punitive, dismissal or loss of pay or something like that. But I think the system needs to be looked at, and there's been a lot of discussion around this, because we really want to, in the next 3 to 4 years, by the end of 2023, 2024, according to the Treasury, we will have lost 24,000 personnel in the South African Police Service. That's a lot of police officers to lose. And how they're going to lose them is they're going to say, well, we're going to bring in new recruits. We're just going to have about 5,000 people leave the police service every year, mostly for retirement or medical or resignations. We're not going to hire any new police officers. So the next 3 years, we're going to lose 15,000 that way, and then they'll be finding other ways to not fill other posts. But that's going to really undermine the police resource base, and you're not going to get new people in, and that really is a problem. So if this system is working better, you could be getting rid of, even if it's 10%, 1 out of 10 police officers is not doing what they should be doing. If you could get rid of that 1 out of 10 in an organization of 180,000 people, you could really free up resources and then change public perceptions. So that would be something I would also focus on. And that's just the civil claims. You can see the blue graph is the amount in rands. So in the last 5 years, from 2015-16 to 2019-20, 1.8 billion rand has been paid out to people who've gone to court to sue the police for wrongful behavior, unlawful behavior. That big spike there in 2019, I think, was related to payouts to the Marikana victims, then dropped, but from what was mentioned in May by Becky Tselia, I think we're already going to see an increase in civil claim payouts in the last financial year compared to the previous financial year. So that is the amount where people go to court, and the courts, in most cases, unless there's been a settlement by the police, have accepted that a police officer has broken the law or regulations, caused harm to this person, and have awarded this person money. A lot of it's illegal arrests. So again, conduct really can have an impact on your resource base. And in that same period where we see increase in civil claims, you see from the National Victims of Crime Survey, Stats SA, a decline in approval ratings of police. From 2011 onwards, the general trend has been a negative one. And last week, Afrobarometer came out and said only 26% of South African adults have somewhat or a lot of trust in the police. And it's obviously way too low. We need that to go up as much as possible. And officer safety, this will be my last set of, I think that's always an issue we need to be paying a lot of attention with, and the most recent quarter stats were really worrying. I think what we've generally seen is a positive trend over the last sort of 10 or 15 years. And that's the top line is the total number of police officers who die on and off duty. Most police officers who are murdered are off duty, and the bottom line is the Gauteng trend. So it's been looking okay, but it's still too high, but heading in the right direction in terms of going down. And this is the SAPS on-duty death trend from 2009 to 2020, and I think that's quite encouraging. I think a lot of work was done in the 1990s, and that has been very encouraging. We've been very happy to see that. But what's been worrying is you can see that last year. You see an increase there. And what I found very worrying in the quarter stats nationally was just this huge increase in numbers of officer deaths, both on and off duty. 24 more police officers were killed in the last quarter than was the same in the same period last year. It's a 300% increase. Over 70% of those are off duty. And I think there needs to be a focus now on how to stop police officers who are off duty getting killed and what's going on there. So there definitely does need to be a very solid focus on that. And also, we shouldn't only be looking at this when it's a death. We should be looking at the situation when police officers are not killed but are attacked. All those attacks on police officers must be given a huge amount of attention and detailed analysis to undertake what takes place in the situation, in the environment, what are the factors that lead to people attacking police officers, so we can start addressing that. Because if we can address that, then obviously we can get the deaths down. So I will end there and be happy to take questions. So just to wrap it up, I want to thank the opportunity to address the committee again. There's nothing easy about fixing crime or reducing crime. There's nothing easy or simple about policing. It's probably one of the most difficult and complex jobs there is in a government department. So I will happily take questions and be part of the discussion. Thank you very much.
We should proceed because we are facilitating.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Let me thank Graham for that presentation. I'm told that it's the time for us now to engage in discussion. Maybe I should stand up there. Thank you. I'll be guided because there are two groups that will be engaging with the, should I say, three presentations. As long as you will understand that what was presented by the Provincial Commissioner was an introduction and a broad overview, then the details were presented by, let me remember the rank again, by Khalane? Brigadier Chakalane, Brigadier Chakalane. And then the presentation from Graham from the Institute for Security Studies. I would appreciate that because we've got a large number of people. Others are online, others are in the room here. If you can, please, when you're online, just raise your hand. I can see it from the system here. But if you are in the room here, you can easily raise your hand. I'll be able to see it. So let me now recognize any hands that would like to speak. If you've got a lot of hands in the first round, we will take few, get comments, then we get to the other hands. Just to assist us with the kind of questions we'd appreciate, I will first ask Honorable Hoffman to be the first one. Then we have Sitswalo Moja, who will come after that. I just see the two hands for now. Let's hear that. Honorable Hoffman.
Thank you, Member Kanile. I really appreciate the time and everybody's value added or value that they add here. I must say, talking to the stats, I think it is good that the PC brings it into context with regards to previous years that we haven't looked at the lockdown or that there was no lockdown. I think it brings a better perspective even for me as a member of the Safety Committee. That being said, I want to add to the presenter that just presented and state the following. If we look at the police performance, the members on the ground have a very difficult task in maintaining the integrity of the SAPS as it stands now. I've got a heart for the police, and I know and I work with numerous members of the police, good, and I've seen some bad members as well. With that being said, it is very important for us as leaders sitting here together today and for the PC and his senior staff members to maintain discipline within the SAPS. With that being said, it is for me a bit worrisome that we look at the disciplinary actions and the decline therein. As soon as pressure goes up within in a certain sense, you should actually have more disciplinary action because there's more interaction between SAPS and the communities at large. So that will bring more, with that interaction, more disciplinary actions, more altercations with the public. What I'm worried about is the following. If there's a decline in disciplinary actions, it means that most probably the system isn't working. Either the legal system within SAPS have a problem, or there is a brothership, cronyism that is within the police. And as soon as we sit where there is, we don't act against members that's in the wrong, then other members in effect sees that and that actually promotes corruption and all the bad things that might be happening in the police. And that is a big concern for me. If we've got a strong leadership and that acts upon on corruption and those types of things, then you will see a decline, a positive decline in members acting out or not doing what they're supposed to do. But if we see a natural decline in disciplinary action, and we all know that there is a problem within SAPS with regards to discipline and corruption and that, then that is a red flag for me. PC and the presenter, thank you for enlightening us. I want to close to say that these interactions are welcomed, and this does do good for everybody. We get a better picture of what's happening. And with that being said, I hope that the PC will actually look at this presentation and give us a better understanding of what's happening with regards to discipline within the SAPS. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Just before I get to Sitswalo Moja on our platform, I'm advised that because we've got problems with time, I must take all those that are willing to ask whether you are in the room here or you are outside or in the other platform. So please, if you can raise your hands if you are on our virtual platform, so that we don't waste time. So I won't have a chance to ask for the next round. I'll now take over Sitswalo Moja.
Sitswalo Moja from Heart City Councillor, MMC of Public Safety. I just need a clarity. I just want to come by the police. My question is based on the presentation of the crime stats that was presented. Because they were talking about the Kagiso, where there is a hotspots there. I want to know whether is this report, it can be unbundled to understand exactly where is the hotspots in Kagiso. I'm raising this because the police station of Kagiso, they also look after the Tepiso, which is Tepiso from our side is under the Joburg metropolitan. And we found that also, whenever the boundaries, which you don't know who determined the boundaries of the police stations, you find that too much where there is a closer, shacks, mikukus, they will be determined to be under the Kagiso, which means now whenever the crimes happen, it will be deemed as a Kagiso, there is a hotspot. So if we can be clarified exactly where is the hotspot, and even this boundaries chair, I will just make an example like when you go from Krugersdorp, you go to Randfontein, you join Randfontein, R28 road, there is a little bit of Mikuku there. Those people, when there is a problem, they have to go to Kagiso. You leave the distance that you can go to Krugersdorp police station, which is 5 minutes, but the people from that side have to go to Kagiso, which can go there 15 to 20 minutes to arrive in Kagiso police station. And who determined these boundaries of the police station, and how did they did it? What is it informed them to do the way the boundaries of the police station is being determined? Because you'll find that where there is a black people, they will put the police station that will be looked after our black generals or whatever, the colonels. Wherever where there is a white people, you don't see too much shacks there. And this is how we deemed as if the crime is very high on those areas because of those boundaries which are determined by whoever determines them. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you very much for that question. There's another hand. Honorable Ndlovana. Please unmute Honorable Ndlovana.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair of the session. You know, I've got a few questions that I want, or it might also be regarded as comments. But I've got a few questions, and I'm asking this question because the presenter is one of those people who have worked in this field for quite some time, and he can be able to assist us to find solution to the challenges. You know, when I was presenting, I was thinking that what is the link between some of the outcomes of Stat SA in terms of population concentrated in certain areas? For example, an unemployed population concentrated in a certain area, and employed and professional population concentrated on another in terms of crime hotspots. But also, what kind of crimes happen there, except that if people come and steal in the area. But what I'm interested in, I want to know what kind of crimes that happens in areas like areas of people who are rich and educated, as well as people who are uneducated, not rich, but also overpopulated. That's number one. And those stats are there in Stat SA. And I think from time to time, the police are supposed to be using such information in order for them to plan for better, to plan for better management of crime. Number two is when crime stats are released, and we now know where certain crime happens or what is our crime patterns. Do you, in your experience, have a feel that police will use crime stats to actually manage differently, manage crime differently in certain areas? Two, do police have a different strategy in terms of different areas in dealing with crime? I'll make an example. Through environmental design, in areas where it's more students, our approach of crime should actually be completely different, because we know why the students are being targeted and what is it that the criminals get from them. And obviously it is a crime hotspot, but a specific crime is being committed in such areas. We have a different approach in informal settlement, because there you get people who have access to alcohol, and taverns are being not properly, are not legal. You have people who are overcrowded, and sometimes it might be people who are not having a higher education, and education there it might be up to matric. But also in terms of affluent areas, you know, I know that, and this I will confirm that you know, you have serious challenges of domestic violence in affluent areas, but people are rich and women are scared to lose the benefits. They don't talk about it, and you'll end up having mystery deaths or people committing suicide. That's number one. Number two is the issue of the attitude of older police. If we look at the stations where police are older, and the attitudes are become rusty, and I'm sorry to actually use this particular language, and I'll tell you why I'm saying this. If you look at how Aboma Berette's attitude towards crime fight, they were more focused on wanting to fight crime and not focus about litigation. They didn't care whether, if they deal with you after committing crime, they were willing to take risks. But also they were more energetic in terms of crime fighting, as opposed to Amaposa. You call, they will only respond after after 3 hours. And their actual attitude is, we're waiting for a pension. Don't you think that it is time that also in South Africa, we need to then develop an approach similar to American police, where when you're at a certain age, you have reached a certain position and you are recognized for having reached that position, and you are released from the system and borrowed to other countries to go and assist with training instead of keeping you there where you don't have energy anymore. The things that you are doing are things that you've been doing on a daily basis, and they are now boring you. So in what I'm trying to say here is, if you look at the station with more older police, don't you think we also have high rate of crime in that particular precinct? And also, because I worked with you with Metro when I was at Johannesburg, you know, the issue of environmental design, we all know that it contributes to high crime rates. Depending on how the environment is created, it also contributes to a low crime rate. Why are we not influencing all spheres of government to actually approach as per all the things that you have said all these years, all the presentations that you have made, all this advice that you have done? Why are we not seeing any changes in terms of environmental design that works better for our people in terms of crime fighting? Thank you very much, Chair of the session.
Thank you very much, Honorable Malobane, Kosi Malobane. May I, because I don't see any other hand, and I want to give over to the PC and Graham to respond, but before I sit down, can I just maybe direct it to Graham? Oh, there's a hand in the house, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Let me recognize you. You'll also introduce yourself, then you ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is Advocate Nogobo Pedi from IPIT. I'm going to be basing my concern on what the Honorable Hoffman was saying earlier. I'm actually part of the IPIT disciplinary committee, which we normally hold on the second Tuesday of every month with the community safety, or at the community safety house. The concern and a question at the same time is the investigation of disciplinary recommendations that I think normally refer to the police and the metros. I would say, personally, I've raised that on numerous occasions with the committee, especially where you find that a senior member has to be investigated. You find that a senior member is investigated by a very junior member. You find a captain investigating a brigadier. And you start asking yourself, how is the captain going to feel investigating his most senior personnel? And will he be free to come up with the proper results, or is going to be scared that, of course, if I can otherwise come up with the what is required, I might end up being dismissed or otherwise being victimized? So I would like to put this on my leader, my general, to please look into this, because we still don't see any improvement on that, especially in the CDB. We know very well that once we send a recommendation, no matter what kind of a crime or a criminal offense was committed, it's going to come back with a not guilty no matter what, is going to be not guilty. So it's not actually improving the service, service to the people. Whilst we are looking at what we normally refer to as Batupedi principle. Unfortunately enough, that's not what is happening in the SAPS. So we would like to see that actually improving. I would like to thank you on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. I don't see any hands from both on the platform here and in the house. As I sit down to give you a chance to respond, just two issues quickly. First one to you, Graham. Just to have I would have appreciated if you had commented also on the actions that are taken by the Gauteng police under the operation called Operation Ukayamulao. The fact that there are a number of, but I think at some stage, although they do operations, but they end up finding out that there are a number of wanted criminals that they are able to arrest in those operations. Do you think that operation has an impact on the matter you raise about the perceptions on police? That's the first question. The second one, maybe also directed to you, Graham, is when I look at your study, it seems to suggest that it's only on the actions of the South African Police Service, and I might be wrong, that's why I'm asking the question. I'm not sure if you have been able to measure the impact of the Metro Police, because they also have a mandate, amongst others, to fight crime, and also, to a certain extent, the Gauteng Provincial Traffic Department and its capacity. It's possible that maybe you didn't, maybe it's something that we might want to look at, but it's just a question that I want your comment on. Thank you very much. Over to I don't know, want to start the PC or Graham? PC first, thank you.
I think, let's start with the overall issue of the principle we are applying for. Okay. Vaccination.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you, Provincial Commissioner. As the Provincial Commission directed, I will just respond to the aspect of highlighted in terms of demarcation of boundaries. I think it's important first, Chair, to also realize and maybe state it again that members of the public is not obliged to go to a specific police station when they want to report crime. They can go to any police station, their closest police station, to report crime. If that crime happened to occur in another policing precinct's area of jurisdiction or area of policing, that case docket will simply be transferred to that other station for investigation purposes. But yeah, our community can go to the closest police station and report their crimes there. The demarcation of police station boundaries is usually considered in line with both magisterial as well as the municipal boundaries. Those are the key aspects that is taken into consideration. Obviously then, also the topographical layout of the police station precinct. If there's natural borders or rivers or something like that, that also have an impact on the determination of the boundaries. The expansion and the developments and growth in policing precincts also have an impact on the boundary. For instance, if there's new developments in an area, or even the establishment of new service points within a specific policing area. The case in point which was mentioned was the Tsepisong area. Tsepisong previously was in Dobsonville, and now Doornkop is a station that was established as the fully-fledged police station, so that also then have an impact. As I mentioned previously, boundaries were aligned more or less to magisterial boundaries to make it easy for the community to report to a police station and a court within the same vicinity, so that they don't have to go to a police station close to them, but to attend court, if necessary, in a total different area. So that is why it is necessary to do that. And our magisterial boundaries are actually proclaimed. So that is why alignment was done there. We are, however, in a process in Gauteng, we already started that a while back, to see how to align our police station sectors with our municipal wards. So that is a process that has been, that has commenced, And that also includes the Tsepisong area. Previously, Tsepisong, as was indicated, is currently part of the Kagiso policing area and reporting to the Kagiso court. Although they are, in terms of municipal, they are under the Johannesburg Metro. So we are on that process. And this process that we do in terms of realignment is a consultative process where we engage with the station commanders of the relevant stations, affected, not only the one, there's more than one station commander usually present, the district management, and then as well as the CPF and the ward councillors. So General, yes, in short, that is the more or less municipal boundaries and magisterial boundaries are taken into consideration when we do the demarcation of police stations. Thank you, General. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Members, and Brigadier Bender for that input. Firstly, just to remark on the inputs we receive from the participants. But first, before I respond, let me appreciate, Gareth, your presentation. It is helpful. We'll look into it. And surely some of the things you spoke about are things which we are currently acting on that. We fully agree with you, almost with everything you have said. And it is true, we do need a whole of government approach when we are fighting crime. Seriously, the ills, social ills which are happening in the country, ending up contributing to the crime situation which we are currently facing, it requires other departments who can act on that. And unfortunately, we do have the legislative mandate to fight crime, but definitely if we need assistance by other departments, including the community at large. The issue which Member Hoffman have actually inputted, we truly appreciate the positive input you have given to us. That encouragement, it calls upon us to can do more. But the issue of dealing with disciplinary cases in the police, surely it is one of our priority in the whole of SAPS, not only in Gauteng. Remember, the NDP, it also talks about professionalism, the SAPS. So amongst the others, we need to deal with rocky police officers who are within our midst. And surely I can assure the House that we do apply zero tolerance. The number of members we are dismissing, and it's not only junior members. It's not only junior members, even senior members are being dismissed in Gauteng for misconduct. So we are serious in terms of getting our house in order. The issue which is raised by the advocate about CDB, we'll look into it and then start to have a closer look if they are doing what they're supposed to do or there is some collusion amongst the members. We'll look into it. And thank you for bringing it to our attention. But we don't appoint a junior member to report to investigate the senior member. Our regulations are clear. Always it will be somebody with higher rank who's doing that thing. Okay, the hotspot, I think the demarcation of the policing precinct, Brigadier Bender dealt with it. And the hotspot obviously in Kagiso is that Tsepisong. It's a problematic area for us. And we keep on doing our best to can try to sort out the problems there. But surely we need the municipality to also dirty its own hands and come closer to us in Tsepiso. Because some of the things which are happening there, surely they want the intervention by the municipality itself. The environmental design, it's also an issue which requires the municipality to can address those things. If we have so many tuck shops and spaza shops which are not regulated, some owned by foreign nationals, they're even slipping into those spaza shops. You know, we ask ourselves a question, who rezoned that place to be a business area to start with? Because the municipality's responsibility is to also to zone and rezone the residential area and so forth. So we want them to can also come closer and check what is that which they have done and what is that which they have not yet do, and also that they can attend to those things. And we also call upon all the municipalities that when they are busy with their IDP, integrated development programs, if we are not responsive, they can directly liaise with my office that we don't have an input from the police and we are busy with development in this particular area. So we call upon the police to can also give an input. We'll ensure that we come and give an input so that everything, even the safety issues in that particular community is taken care of. Going to the matter raised by Honorable Malobane about the attitude of the older generation, yes, across the board, all sectors, all departments, all institutions, the younger generation voice is getting louder and louder by the day. They want to be given an opportunity to lead, to take over, to manage. All of us, even some, they want to be provincial commissioner. I can't resist that. It's happening. So including the legislature, the younger people, they are calling to be given the opportunity to come in there. So we agree with her that younger people need to be given an opportunity because they are more energetic than us. But in the SAPS, we have what we call it the succession plan. And in Gauteng, it is in place. When my time arrives for me to be expired, surely you'll see the younger people taking over. I'm not here forever. So we have a solid succession plan whereby we take the younger generation and we take them by the step by step and ensure that they occupy critical position so that when we leave, they take over and then they run with the process. The issue which was raised again by Gareth about the decline in terms of tracking down the suspects and for murder and other serious crime. That is why in our Okai Malau program, we do have, on a weekly basis, the detectives, they go out and track the wanted suspect. Because we have seen that majority of the crimes committed in Gauteng are committed by the repeat offenders. And then so many people are wanted on the list. And you'll see when we issue the statement on a weekly basis, we give the number of people arrested by the detectives. So this thing is ongoing, and we are trying to address exactly what you have mentioned. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Okay, let me take this opportunity then to ask that, yes, you can come and respond.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, General. I knew that nothing in my presentation would be a surprise to you or any of the police officers in this room. It was actually a presentation to the committee because having worked with the police for many years, and certainly Gauteng, I know that you know all of this, but unfortunately most people in the public don't know it, so it's important often to say these things. And I don't envy your job. I think you have one of the most difficult jobs that you can have. I think police leadership and police officers really are undervalued in our society. So just to talk a bit about the issues of the link between population, unemployment, and crime, there's a sort of sense amongst a lot of people that if you're unemployed or you're poor, you're more likely to commit crime. But actually research that goes into this finds it's not that simple. There are a lot of other factors that are more linked to crime than simply unemployment or poverty. There's usually not just one factor. So, for example, you will find people in wealthy areas committing gender-based violence, getting involved in corruption, fraud, beating their children up. It's not something that just happens in poor communities. It's about a whole range of complex factors that happen in a life cycle of a person. We did a detailed study of repeat violent offenders quite a few years ago now, but it was a 3-year study, and we looked at people across different backgrounds, different socioeconomic status, and certainly the factors are quite complex, but it usually starts with people being exposed to crime and violence at a young age. Particularly violent behavior is something that becomes normalized over time. But it's more issues to do with things like migration. If you have lots of people moving into an area, a lot of people moving out, so that this community is not stable, it's not cohesive, you're more likely to find crime taking place in those kind of communities. Even if they're relatively wealthy, because you can have very poor communities, but there's a lot of community cohesiveness and stability, and you won't see as much crime. So it's not a simple case of doing that. And there's been a lot of studies into this. So things like migration, inequality, access to drugs and alcohol, sort of proportion of young men in that community, existence of drugs or other organized groups that are involved in illicit trades and stuff like that are more likely to be linked to high levels of crime than just simply whether it's a high level of unemployment or a high level of poverty there. On the issue of policing and that research that we're working on with the research components to try and better understand that in the South African context, because not enough of this research has really been done, and if it is done, it'll help frame or help the police better understand how to deal with different kinds of situations in different types of circumstances. When you and the honourable member was talking about age and things like that, of course, but older police officers are hugely experienced, so you never want to lose that experience. And it does take a lot of time. I think policing is a craft. It's not something you can just sort of teach somebody in a college or give a lecture to. It's about being on the ground. It's about actually doing it. It's about being out in communities, learning the challenges you're facing, and that takes a lot of experience. And you sometimes find that some of the older detectives are the most successful because they've got this huge amount of experience. Your older operational commanders have a much better sense of what to do. So it's not a simple issue of age. I think you've got to I think I would be more cautious of having blanket approaches saying once you reach this age, you're out. I think it should be more about the attitude, the passion, the commitment, the experience of the person than necessarily the age. And of course, we want younger people coming into the police all the time. We want to have young people coming in. You want the police to be seen as an employment opportunity, as a positive place to be. You want the best in your society. You want to become police officers because it is an opportunity to do good. Very few jobs, certainly very few in the private sector, but certainly in the public sector. It's like teachers, nurses, police officers. Every day you can help somebody and change someone's life. And that is a much different level of career choice than working in corporate sectors and things like that. And then once you're in the police, you can have a really interesting career because you can go into different directions, you go into investigations, forensics, or visible policing. It should be seen as something we want our best and brightest to actively want to get into the police, and then to make sure we hire them in it. Just the last two questions. I haven't had a chance to do any detailed assessment of the operation Okala, sorry, I don't know what's Okala Mulau. I haven't looked at the data or anything like that, so I can't really comment on it. And then also on the MPD mandate and Gauteng traffic, because we haven't really looked at that in a lot of detail. There was some work done a few years ago, but actually quite a long time ago, I think sort of like in the late 2000s. But I do want to say, I think, and just to reiterate this issue, it's about partnerships. You really want, and this was just mentioned now with local government, is that the police, as was mentioned in the first presentation by Commissioner Mawela, absence of street lighting. Now, police who are patrolling an area will start picking this up. They'll say, well, we can see this is becoming a hotspot because the environment's not good, there's no street lighting, there's abandoned buildings. There must be a structured way in a place that the police can give this information to local government, and then they prioritize fixing those things. So they don't just necessarily, this is something that could be discussed in a lot more detail, but rather than just having a roster of we're going to mow the grass in these different public areas, we're going to fix these lights in this order, if there seems to be an indication from the police that this infrastructure is actually, or lack of infrastructure, or broken infrastructure is now being associated with an increase in crime, those areas must be prioritized by the local government in order to fix it. So that's the kind of partnership you want having in a local level in a very practical way. And that's why it's so important that the police have structures that can work with other government departments in. Same thing with schools, education, health, social workers. For police to be effective, if they have this whole of government approach, and you have all these other service providers around, because the police get called when there's a crisis, but it's not necessarily anything the police can do about it. If a young person's taking drugs, all the police can do is arrest the person, and maybe they go to jail. That's not going to solve the problem that person has taking drugs. They need to go and see a psychologist or a counselor or a social worker. They will look at all those issues if you want to reduce drug demand, which then frees up the police to do more serious work. So you really need to have a strong social system around policing. So I'll just end there on that note and say thanks again very much to everybody for this event.
Thank you, Chairperson. I will respond to the one that indicated the link between the outcome of SAPS product to the crime itself. As the previous speaker has indicated, we cannot, there's no straightforward answer to link population size to the crime itself, because one can argue that we have other areas, other countries whereby the countries is overpopulated and yet the crime rate is minimal. But here, hints are indicated that in Gauteng, in South Africa, we accompany that with inhibiting factors, those that provide opportunistic for those criminal activities. But going back to the SAPS issues, SAPS, they are having various surveys that they are producing, ranging from social to economic. So for social stats, they normally focusing on the access to basic services. So when you read some of the comments when the people are opening the cases, you find out, or to determine where these crimes are happening, you find out some of this information when you do the crime pattern analysis. The issue of environmental design, whereby the informal settlement, there are no lights. And when you do the crime pattern analysis, some of this crime are happening at night, whereby this criminal, they know that there is no proper visible policing due to the infrastructure or environmental design. People are being raped, maybe they're coming from somewhere where they're coming from at night. So linking it to social stats is deprivation to basic services, where it's conducted by SAPS. In terms of those economic related surveys, issue of unemployment, you find that as well, somebody calls a victim, open a case, whereby there's an issue where domestic related violence, maybe a child is fighting with the mother for money, a grant money. This is whereby the issue of unemployment, the child wants access to the money. It results to the issue of domestic related violence. So hence we are saying it's very difficult to determine those two socio-economic factors, but those are the indications that we are getting when people or the victims are affected by crime, when we link them to social and economic products that are done by SAPS. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for the responses, Brigadier Chakalane. I got it right this time. I'm sorry about the earlier time. And from Gareth, last time I said Graham. I'm not good in pronouncing people's names, but I really apologize. We sincerely apologize also that we are behind time, is because we didn't start on time, but we'll try to move on to catch up as quickly as we can. I'm now going to hand over to Honorable Sizakele Nkosi Ndlovana. She's online. She'll be facilitating the next session, and we're hoping that it will also move speedily so that you can be able to catch up with time, but without us compromising the content and all the other things that must be done. Over to you, Honorable Sizakele Nkosi Ndlovana. May we just deal with something? Because of time, is it possible that any follow-up questions can be in writing? Because if we can continue, it's going to create problems with time. If you can put it on the chat group, we'll find a way to responding to you. May I hand over to Sizakele Nkosi Ndlovana, Honorable Nkosi Ndlovana now? Thank you. MMC Moja? MMC Moja, can you hear us? MMC Moja? I'm sorry about that. I think there's a problem. Honorable Nkosi Malubane, over to you. Maybe you can unmute Honorable Nkosi Malubane. Thank you. Yes, we can hear you. You can go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Honorable Member. And also, let me appreciate the presentation.
Sorry, if the police officer is speaking, I can't hear him. I would like to hear him. Is he muted?
I also don't hear him. The police, maybe you can introduce yourself. Who's actually talking on behalf of the police?
Meleko TV.
Thank you, Member Ndlovana, and the
Thank you
President.
very much, Honorable Superintendent. Thank you to everybody for the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank Member Ndlovana and the presenter, Lisa. Honorable members and MEC and the participant and PC, we are breaking for lunch. You are going to come back at 2:30. Thanks, it's lunch time.
Two, 1 2 1 2 1 2 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 hey 1 2 1 2 1 hey 1 2 1 2 1 2 hey 1 2 2 1 2 1 hey 1 2 1 2 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 hey hey 1 2 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 2 1 2 1 2 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 2 hey 1 2 2 1 2 1 2 1
Systems and the appointment of security services at schools and the deployment of community patrollers by the Department of Community Safety at identified high-risk schools. The community patrollers are also in contact with the SAPS sector vehicle, and should any suspicious activity be observed, the sector vehicle is immediately informed and responding to the scene. When we look at Pillar 4, the reactive approach, the detention arrest of criminals will have an impact on the levels of crime at schools, and the OCTA process, that is Organized Crime Threat Analysis process, decisive case management and sufficient informant networks will be critical in ensuring prosecution and elimination of crimes at schools. Pillar 5, the last pillar in this approach, speaks to community mobilization as well as the engagement approach. This critical pillar will enable all role players to educate communities, parents as well as learners, drug abuse, gangsterism, school safety, and also assist in ensuring safer schools. All communities are engaged through various media channels on the impact of crime at schools. Our school safety interventions are implemented to address mostly the following. When you looked at those affecting the learners, it will include bullying and intimidation, substance and drug abuse, gang activities, possession of dangerous weapons, assaults, theft, as well as gender violence. And those relating to criminal activities in the schools is burglary, including the theft of high-tech equipment, vandalism, attacks of learners outside school premises, and then lastly, the theft of infrastructure, theft of fencing, roofing sheets, taps, cabling, and windows. In terms of the school safety programs and projects, the following has been included. The school safety committees, which is actively participating to promote safety at schools. The intervention is also a multidisciplinary approach by police which experience constant challenges, which are then identified and prioritized for specific interventions. The deployment of patrollers to schools to improve safety and security. Social crime prevention school talks, where the social crime prevention coordinator at policing precinct, as well as a sector manager, conduct school talks to discourage criminality and promote patriotism. And then lastly, awareness campaigns, where campaigns are conducted regularly to create awareness on identified challenges and promote information sharing with learners and educators. Chair, having a look at the status of investigation of violence in schools in terms of the caseload, from the 1st of April until the end of August 2021, in terms of Johannesburg district, there was 2 cases registered and 3 arrests, with 1 case being in court. And the Sedibeng district, there's been 1 case, 1 arrest, and the case is currently in court. In terms of burglaries in schools for the same period, you see all 5 the districts are mentioned there. In terms of Ekurhuleni district, there were 3 of those cases are currently at court. The Tshwane district had 108 burglaries at schools, 2 arrests and 1 case in court. The West Rand had 9 burglaries. Proactive role in attempting to identify and diffuse any possible conflict before it escalates to violence. This is done by communicating with the public as well as participants. The following actions are taken in line with legislation. When the police are informed of a large-scale land invasion, it is important that action be taken as soon as possible. If people are in the process of occupying land and or houses but have not settled or are pegging out land and the municipality is unable to control the unlawful land invasion, an urgent interdict should be immediately be sought to stop the invasion process. Any person occupying the relevant land and or houses or erecting structures after the granting of the interdict will be in contempt of court. The unlawful occupation takes place when there is a measure of permanency and where a person has already erected a structure, and the Unlawful Occupation of Land Act of 1998, also known as the PI Act. The eviction of an occupier must take place in terms of the relevant legislation, otherwise the eviction would be illegal. Unlawful occupiers can only be evicted if an eviction order is issued by a magistrate or high court. And then lastly, the court order will have a date by which the unlawful occupier must vacate the said property, and by failing to do so, he or she, the sheriff will be authorized to remove him or her from the premises. Chair, thank you very much. That is our submission.
Thank you very much. There's just a change of plan. We going to be done by
Now, you will remember that, Chair, other than subcommittees will be, and, okay, thank you, yeah, thank you. Thank you, next slide, yeah. Now, there are certain issues that are really disturbing this process. Among those are the level of participation from local municipalities. Only metros are really participating, and there are existing MOUs that have been signed with these ones. And the other problem are really jurisdictional issues that cannot go across the jurisdiction of particular local authorities insofar as dealing with bylaw notices that need to be issued. There is also a lack of clarity. Laws do not actually operate in other municipalities. And there is a problem around shift system which are not standardized, and that becomes a challenge when moving forward. There are issues around lack of clarity on whether members are actually covered when and they've been implemented. The feedback from various local authorities is actually coming very slowly, which also becomes a challenge. Now, you will see that these are actually the activities that have taken place from July. They range around illegal advertisements to informal businesses that are actually held in the inner city, for example, in Sunnyside. There are formal and informal businesses around Pretoria West, and there are informal businesses within Sunnyside. And these businesses have been inspected, and there are numbers there that are given, including the Section 56, that are issued to deal with all the people who are actually violators. And in August, you'll see that there were formal and informal businesses in Sunnyside, which will result implemented to Section 56 being issued for contravention. And also 5 business premises were found to be compliant, while those that were not compliant were actually issued with notices. That constitute the report on bylaws. Thank you very much, Chair.
Over to you, Member Bosch. Member Bosch, we told that you muted. If you can unmute and go ahead. Okay, maybe whilst we're sorting out those technicalities, you'll tell me when she's connected. We now going to go to the process of questions or comments. I would appreciate it if you can also have, so that you can see if there are those that are online who would like to ask questions or comment. There's the first question, the other side. Don't forget to introduce yourself. I know you, but the others don't know you, and our cameras don't know you, so if you can introduce yourself first and then.
Thank you very much, Member Kassen, MEC, PC, and everybody here. Mine is not a question. I'm in this space, so I'm not going to ask, but I'm going to comment to try and assist myself in this space of community safety. The presentation was spot on, and I just want to say that with regards to addressing the cable theft and the illegal scrap yards, we would like to see more and more scrap yards being closed after they are found to be in possession of stolen cable. It looks like it's second-hand goods, but do they have second-hand goods certificate? And the answer is no, we know that. But why are we allowing them to continue to operate, to sell these wheel caps? And we've seen our cars without wheel caps, and obviously we know where they went to the street corners to be sold. And that's where the illegal scrapyard starts. Starts very deployed by in the schools. Now, there's two challenges currently. The EPWP policy that says 1 year in, 1 year cooling off period. It becomes a little bit of a challenge because you don't always
Member
get
Kanile,
people who are willing to...
This is Member Bosch, can you hear me?
You don't always get people who are always willing to volunteer to go and be our patrollers at school. I doubt if provincially we can deploy more than 40% of patrollers that were not deployed in the last term.
The mic will be
I don't have the exact figure, but I know it's very, very low.
No one hears you.
And that is purely
Currently
because
the
of the
presenter
EPWP
from my
policy
side,
that
I
says
can't
1 year
hear
in,
him
1
at
year
all.
cooling off period. Another challenge is that in the Department of Education, we have what you call brigades, and we also have what you call admin assistants. Their positions are advertised in the papers, and it has
I know Member
land
Kanile was
invasion.
sharing,
I've said it
is
over and
Member
over and over.
Ndlovana.
Where open land is fenced, we have never seen illegal occupation. People who organize the syndicates that organize land invasion, are people who understand that you are there 72 hours, no one will remove you without a court order. We've managed to win with private ownership. People who are owning land privately, they were able to fence to secure that land. But municipal land is a problem. If it's open land and belongs to the municipality, it's a big, big problem. And we know it's all these processes that, the fence must be tender, that and that and that. So to remove the burden on the police, I think the department that is involved, or the municipality, whether it's public works or whoever it is, they need to do what they need to do so that we don't have resources spent on something that could have been prevented. And I know I did say
Presentation is not meant for us. We don't hear
the presentation
anything.
on improving service delivery in the police stations. there is a proposal that I sent to Minister Ayanda Ndlovana in her previous term with regards to reviewing the request to have job applicants having to go and certify documents at the police station. You find that there's only one position available. 1,000 of them all over the province will be queuing at their police station applying for one position. And we know they will not all be called. We know they will not all be shortlisted. And that is the time that the police also follow. Thank you.
I think we really have a technical problem because those who are online couldn't hear us, but at some stage, about a few seconds ago, they could hear us, and they said the sound then disappeared again. Maybe I should go ahead unless you've been able to sort it out there. Is there any other question in the House?
Of it and the dealing in it. I think maybe we should look as legislatures maybe at getting or proposing a better or a harsher law with regards to the selling of state infrastructure. That would be my first comment on scrap metals. On the aspect of land invasions, I've got two questions. Have clarity on that. The second portion of that question would be trespassing. According to me, trespassing is a crime. That's where I actually want to hook on with what that gentleman just said in the fencing of trespassing, and if the police station can actually do something with regards to trespassers, if there is no fence or boards erected. Then my last question, or my last thing would be that we must remember with land invasions or invaded, and the same instance with municipal land. At the end of the day, it's going to have an enormous impact on the landowners surrounding that portion. One of the portions of land that I'm thinking of now is in Mfuleni. That I have with that, after speaking to the station commander and everybody involved, is without the court order, it seems like the police cannot act. When you do not protect the assets, is 2 or 3 months down the line, you get protests where there's no services for those land invaders. They come to the highways and they burn tires and they demand services. And so at the end of the day, the council put a lot of strain onto the police force to police this whole thing. So I really think that councils and the legislature should take this up more seriously. Thank you.
I think we can close this matter. Can you maybe just assist me with
We can hear you loud and clear. There's no hand in the House here. I'm not sure if you can see any online.
Okay. Thanks, Chair of the session. I want to comment based on all the presentations which have been done today. From my perspective, I'm realizing that they are not addressing the issue of the resource versus the population. And secondly, Chair, Member Kanyile, we should request a response from the law enforcement agency. Are they going to respond on their strategies, plan on place, on how to address the adequate resource shortage? and the challenges of crime. And raising from the presentation is with regard to the terms of the bylaw enforcement versus the resources, whether they are sufficient or insufficient, the school safety, are the resource adequate, the gender-based violence, are the resource adequate, and also the trio crime are resource adequate. I think if we go back to our theme, Honorable MEC, we said that our theme is that we are going to assessment on the resources allocation to the SAPS to fight crime in Gauteng. That's my comment, Chair of the session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've just had a
Honourable Kanile,
communication
can you
with
maybe
Member Bosch
continue from
because
that
it would
side just to make
it
things
looks like there's
easier,
a common
especially
sound
for everyone else that's
on
also
the other
virtually
platform, so
connected?
she just suggested that maybe I should continue. I'm not sure if there are hands on the line. Okay, we don't see presentations that were made so that they can be able to at least understand what we're saying. Maybe you can also agree that at some stage they could always send the questions so that we can then refer them to relevant people and be able to respond to them in writing. Let me take this opportunity then to ask if from the presenters, are there any comments they want to make on the comments and questions? Some of them are questions, some of them are comments. If you'd like to say something, let's start with the SAPS.
Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, the MEC for Community Safety, the Community Policing Forum, the senior management of the South African Police Service. I will take for the issues relating to the G-Leaf, as I am the chairperson for Gauteng Law Enforcement Agency Forum. Maybe to give a little bit of a background to say, the G-Leaf, we have the active structure in Gauteng. The structure is linked to national, as in national, we have in the law enforcement agency, which is attended by the chiefs, or the chiefs of metropolis, the chiefs who are commanding the provinces. So having said that, is that there is quarterly meetings which they attend, and in turn, in Gauteng province, we also do the same, as we had which were raised in relations to the G-Leaf. The issue which was raised relating to the cable theft by the chairperson of the CPF there, we are taking note of it in terms of the illegal scrapyard, as you indicated that there has to be more operations which has to be carried out in ensuring that we give more attention. And of course, the issue of looking into the people who are selling on the street, we will also give attention, though we're giving the attention, but we'll give more attention in terms of that with our designated police officers, those who deal with the issues of scrap metals, issuing in conjunction with the station commanders those certificates. Then the issue of the stipends, though is related to the Department of Education, I must indicate that we have taken note of the support which you have indicated in terms of a prison sentence, which has to be looked into by the parliamentarian very much. In terms of the land invasion, I think you raised two things, land invasion and trespass. The invasion, as and when, because there is a specific period, as and when people, they stay, within that land. If they stayed longer, we will not be in a position as the police to remove them without, the competent court order. So, having said that, I can give, for example, some of the incidents which happened. For example, in Cape Town, there was an issue for a person who put like a small mkuku. The person was staying in there. And from there, the police, they went there, they removed this particular person. Meanwhile, he left his, his belongings, the clothing. This issue was...
Thank you. Honorable Chair, the Provincial Commission just requested me, when you talk about the resourcing and of the police, to talk about, just to highlight the profile of Gauteng in terms of the magnitude of what is expected to be policed. First of all, there's just two slides that we're going to highlight, that I think is reflected. Is reflected there. Just go to the next slide, please. Or is it clicking here? Top. Thanks. Here you go. So if we just briefly look at the size of the province in square kilometers, it's 18,319. Although it's the smallest province, we are the most densely populated. The number of national key points at that time when it was prepared was 64. The population 2020 mid-year estimate from Stats South Africa was 15,667,194, with an unemployment rate at that stage earlier this year in May of 30.1%. We had 529 municipal wards. In terms of our policing, Gauteng province is made up of 5 districts and 143 police stations. And these stations are of urban, rural, and urban-rural mixture as follows. The province contributes 27.8 to the national crime figure as compared to the other 6 provinces. That was for the third quarter crime stats. Our top 40 Gauteng stations identified earlier contribute more or less 51.1% of the crime, and we have a number of GBV hotspot areas, police stations identified as follows. It was Alexandra, Diepsloot, Dobsonville, Honeydew, Mamelodi East, Morocco, Orange Farms, Temba, and Tembisa. And then just a highlight in terms of our infrastructure, in terms of the province. In the tertiary institutions, we have 370. Schools, there's 6,386 schools, 168 hospitals, 910 clinics, 55 magisterial courts, 2 high courts, 5,195 off-site liquor outlets. On-site, 29,632. Train stations, we have 221. Taxi ranks 1,266, 8,188, and dominant industries we have 6. In terms of second-hand goods, 1,302 general dealers, 85 auctioneers, 425 jewelers, motor vehicle dealers is 2,023, scrap metal dealers 1,193, and recyclers 178. And then lastly, I'm not going to go through all the detail in terms of resources, just to say that in terms of between the 5 districts and the 143 police stations as well as the specialized units, we have a total of 23,574 operational personnel, and then there's also a breakdown provided there. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, General.
Institute for